should I have a recommendation? Welcome to Media Path. I'm Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
We each carve out our own media path, making our way through the books and movies and series that capture our attention and then inspire us to learn more about a topic of interest. For example, if you were impressed with Bonnie Bartlett in Better Call Saul, you may have Googled her to discover her performance in Saint Elsewhere and spent the remainder of the weekend streaming that series on Hulu. And your Bonnie-inspired journey will lead you to her beautiful new book called Middle of the Rainbow. How a wife, mother, and daughter managed to find herself and win 2 Emmys before your adventure takes you to this podcast where Bonnie joins us to continue the conversation. First, though, Fritz, what have you brought to share with us?
All right, I have a documentary this week. It's called The Grab.
Yeah.
It's streaming in a bunch of places. This is one of those documentaries that will give you goosebumps, but sometimes we need goosebumps to get activated. This is the story of an investigative reporter from the Center for Investigative Reporting who uncovers the money and influence behind the efforts to control the most vital resources on the planet. Sounds otherworldly, it almost is. Quietly and out of sight of the public, private investors and mercenaries are working to seize food and water resources at the expense of an entire country. Here's an example. Saudi Arabia is running out of water, which means they can't sustain their agriculture. So they've purchased square miles by square miles of land in Arizona where there are free water rights, drawing the water out of the aquifer and using it to grow acres of crops that are harvested in Arizona and sent back to Saudi Arabia. This leaves the residents of Arizona with greatly depleted water supplies. This is happening all over the world. And do you remember the name Eric Prince? The infamous brother of Betsy DeVos, Trump's Secretary of Education.
Eric/Dark Prince?
Yeah. He started the Blackwater Company, the controversial mercenary fighting force used in the Iraq War. Prince heads one of the several companies that are doing these grabs at tremendous profit. Food systems all over the world are more fragile than they appear. We've all heard the reasons why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, for his ego, to restore the Russian Empire. How about this? Ukraine is responsible for 30% of the world's wheat production. So the next war we fight might not be over ideology, might not be over oil, might not be over border disputes. It might be over meat and wheat and water. Interesting, disturbing, but I recommend it.
Yeah, very good movie. I watched it, Fritz, based on your recommendation to me, and everyone should know what is going on. What are the motivations behind the political actors, the big money actors throughout the world? What is really driving them? Because it's not on the surface. You have to dig a little, and these reporters are truly brave, the ones featured in the doc. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to recommend something a little less important, but I found it captivating. The movie called Brats. You've heard of this, Fritz?
I haven't.
Yeah, so it's Andrew McCarthy's Brat Pack doc.
Oh, I've heard about that,
You've been waiting for this, right? For about 30 years. You were just hopeful, and here it is. Okay, I have a lot of actor friends on Facebook fiercely annoyed with this film, posting comments like, oh, boo-hoo, you're too famous for being too famous. And I get that, but I like to go where you are emotionally without a lot of whatabouting. Yes, Andrew McCarthy is more successful than any of us, with the noted exception of Bonnie Bartlett. But that does not negate the impact of the negative notoriety bomb that struck his career when a magazine writer branded him and a group of his co-stars as the Brat Pack. What is so sociologically interesting for me here is that one sassy headline could have so much clout. And what I concluded is that language resonates when we want it to. The Brat Pack label seed fell into fertile soil because enough people were walking around thinking Rob Lowe has been to enough cool kid parties. It's wedgie time. And it was devastating to the hot young stars who really were talented actors doing excellent work. Today's Facebook posts echo the rapid 1985 adoption of the demeaning nickname. The Brat Pack label fractured this group of 6 or so actors. In order to continue being taken at all seriously, they had to dramatically disassociate themselves, and most have not seen each other in decades. So let's journey beyond jealousy and travel with Andrew McCarthy on his journey to meet up with Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Ali Sheedy, Demi Moore, and Rob Lowe to talk about how the Brat Pack title affected, confounded, and defined them. The conversations are intelligent and illuminating, and they remind us that these people really are gifted, thoughtful, and insightful actors. Andrew even makes his way into the office of David Bloom, the New York Magazine writer with the Brat Pack branding iron, who is still pretty smugly self-righteous about the power of his career-tarnishing hit piece. Let's also consider that Brat Pack work not only spoke to a generation, it has resonated with every subsequent gen attempting to figure out who they are and how they fit into the world. Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, The Outsiders, St. Elmo's Fire, the work is timeless. You will find Brats on Hulu.
And a couple of them wouldn't do it, right?
I'm not going to, there's no spoilers here. He goes in search of everyone.
And not everybody participates.
Not everyone participates.
And one in particular, with no spoiler, didn't want to do it because he said, oh, I don't want to reflect on, the toxins of the past. I just want to have a future, which I thought was pretty cool.
They're still trying to outrun it,
Yep.
which is so compelling.
Yep.
It's time to introduce our wonderful guest.
I can't wait.
Bonnie Bartlett's career spanned 7 decades, during which she starred in the 50s soap Love of Life and numerous stage productions, followed by an expansive TV career that brought her 2 Emmys. You may know her as Grace Snyder in Little House on the Prairie or as Ellen Craig in St. Elsewhere. She has been married for 70 years to her co-star of Stage and Screen and Home, William Daniels. Welcome, Bonnie Bartlett.
Hello,
Yay.
hello. Oh, you're wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Wonderful.
Thank you for being here. So my opening question, because we've read your book and it's absolutely brilliant. So let's start with your childhood and your parents. Your book really helps the reader understand how childhood trauma never stops impacting our adult lives.
That is true. And that's what the book is about, really about. I'm just a Midwestern, normal, kid. But things happen in all these homes that are quiet. And you're shocked. By them. And I certainly was traumatized by a very difficult, wonderful, brilliant father. He was an actor, had been an actor. He did nothing but quote Shakespeare, and he didn't talk to you. He talked to you, unless it was about sex, he talked to you in rhyme, in poetry. Such a complicated man, and it was very, very difficult for me to survive a childhood where I could have reported him, to the police, but, of course, nobody ever did things like that. And my mother didn't help because she just ignored the whole thing and said everything's fine.
Well, that's, I think, one of the great lessons of your book. This is honestly one of the most breathtakingly honest autobiographies anybody will ever read. And you start out with a bang, talking about 2 circumstances where you were abused when you were young, and you were brave enough to talk about your reaction to those assaults, which is sort of counterintuitive.
Yes.
It wasn't what you expected, and I thought, this is unbelievable. You can tell you've had years of psychotherapy to be that loose. But your father was the first of those. Your father crossed a line with you.
Yes.
And the great the great lesson in this is something we're hearing about now. Mothers don't turn the fathers in for doing that thing. That's what we're talking about now.
That's right. That's right. I saw a movie with Glenn Close and that wonderful actor, tall. I forget his name. Anyway, it was about he abused his daughter. But Glenn, playing the mother, every time I see her, I start to cry, Glenn, because I think, oh, you're my mommy. I want you to be my mommy, because she protected the daughter. It was something about something, the movie. It was on television. And when I saw it, I just sat there and wept and wept and wept and wept. And I thought, that is so what I wanted to have happen. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really want to have that happen because you don't want to hurt your father. That's the problem. You love this person so much, and you don't want to hurt them. That's why I didn't write about it.
It's fairly common, isn't it? It's a common paradigm.
It is.
That for whatever reason, mom doesn't want to turn in the dad because she doesn't want to disrupt the family unit.
Well, she doesn't.
And she's afraid, or she's in denial about it.
You see, she was really a Victorian lady. Mm-hmm. I'm sure she was
asexual, or
yeah. I'm sure she was. And she didn't like it. At the dinner table, when he would get a little drunk too, but he would talk about sex. He would talk about all the people in New York and all the things they did to each other. My brother would leave the table. My mother would leave the table. I sat there listening to my God. He was my God. He had gotten me through a tough illness. I just worshipped him.
Well, have you ever wondered with your father's consistent ranting about homosexuals if he may have been protesting too much?
Yes, that has occurred to me only as an adult.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what that was when I was little, except what he told me.
Right.
He told me things that we didn't know. He would refer to a producer in New York. He's a lapper. He would say he's a lapper. You don't know what that means, but you do. You do and you don't. It sounds bad.
It's some sort of connotation that is negative the way he sees it.
Yeah, yeah. And then later as an adult, of course, I knew what he meant.
Yeah, and I also think that, what your book is really about, and this is something that we all know, but in your book you illustrate it so beautifully and so thoroughly about how when you are messed with as a child, your relationship to sex is tarnished because you don't understand whether or not
twisted. I'm all twisted.
Whether your sexual responses to life are normal or part of something dark that you knew was dark when you were a child, but it's still sometimes some things are pleasurable, but not by the person who's doing it.
Right. Well, I was convinced that I was peculiar. I was convinced that I was bad. I was convinced that, I was this strange creature out here. So that anything that happened to me, yes, I was convinced that it was bad. And it was my fault. It was my fault because I was this strange person who brought out this in me. When I was on Love of Life, one of the actors on the show really raped me twice, and I had a physical, positive reaction. Mentally, I hated him, and I hated...
Yeah, you had an orgasm twice. That's the fascinating part of your story.
Yeah.
That you admitted that, sort of...
The body responds.
Right, your body responds, but your soul's in a different place completely.
All I could see was these black eyes looking at me.
From two assaults, that's so fascinating. And what did therapy teach you about what that was?
It came later. In other words, when it happened, even my therapist, even my husband, who had been on the road, said, "You must have wanted it." How do you explain to somebody that you don't want it? Except I wanted to kill him, and I thought about that. And I thought, if I had had a lamp or something and I could have clunked, I might have killed him. And then guess who'd go to jail? Me. Nobody would have believed it. Nobody would have believed it at that time. We're talking in the 50s, right? Yeah, we're talking about the 50s.
But I don't know that men were, or even maybe still are, able to help women understand our sexual complicated feelings.
It's very difficult.
Because they have their own attraction to us that informs all of their belief systems about it. And it's so confusing.
And that's another good thing about this book, Bonnie. It's pre-Me Too.
Yeah.
It's pre the evolution of women's rights. And it's interesting to see what you had to put up with, particularly in show business. It was the same in all corporate areas and office areas, but really, and you just had to buck up and deal with it.
That's right.
You had no recourse.
But all women were like that. I mean, there's not a woman that's been in the business or been around who has not had to deal with this. And before Me Too, they kind of expected it and they accepted it, and they. I have things in there about doctors.
Yeah. Where
doctors really went way over the line with me, and I even called them on it. I called that one doctor, and he said, "I don't give a damn. All I care about is operating." I said, "But look what you're doing to your mother, your wife and daughter. I've met them." He said, "I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn." It's all.
That's the Dr. God complex.
Yeah. And that's it. It's very bad when you think you are different or above the law, if you will, in daily life. You're not.
It's just an attitude of taking. And there are certain people on the planet who just take. They're not interested
and they're not sick.
Mm-hmm.
They just, I'm not talking about psychos.
It's just a mindset.
A mindset.
Like if I have the ability to take it, I'm going to take it.
That's
there are
right.
people who steal toilet paper from work, and there are people who say, well, I'm not going to cross that line because I expect better of myself.
Elizabeth Taylor did that.
Did
I
she?
worked with Elizabeth Taylor, and when she left a job, she took everything with her. All the clothes, all the stuff. Yes, the toilet paper and the towels. Anything that was in the dressing room was hers. And this was her revenge for having been made to work as a kid.
Wow.
That's interesting.
And her revenge was also to be very, very late and drive everybody crazy on the set because they wouldn't know what they'd say. They'd start to shoot something else, and then she would. Somebody would say, "The ship is arriving," and then they'd pretend that they were shooting the scene that she was in. And then she'd come in and she sat down next to me, and I was a secretary to the MGM guy. She says, "Do I have time for a cig?" And she'd pull out a cigarette, sat there, and we chatted, and she smoked. People had been waiting on the set for hours for her. Hours.
But that was the only control she could exercise, and so she did.
She said, Lou Antonio was a friend of mine, a director, and Lou directed her on a play in New York. And she was always late. And he said to her one day, he said, "Elizabeth, what can I do to make you come to rehearsal on time?" And she said, "You see that coat in the window? You buy me that."
Wow.
So isn't it interesting? Because she, as a child, had been made to do all these things. And she got her revenge all her life by driving everybody crazy. And she could because she was the most gorgeous creature in the world.
Oh, that's true.
A huge, huge star.
Well, you were consistently working on and attempting to better understand yourself, and you have used both therapy and actor training to get to those hidden places. And that's very interesting to me because your work itself is therapy for the viewer. When we watch wonderful performances, we can see pieces of ourselves that help us process difficult emotions.
That's right. That's right. That's what acting is about.
Yeah.
That is my desire as an actress from the time I was little, was to communicate. I not as myself, but as a character. And I could do that. I could be more myself as a character than I could myself because I had secrets. I had, things not to talk about.
And I don't want to dwell on your dad anymore, except that I'm fascinated by the relationship.
Yeah.
And how much work you had to do to be able to put that behind you. And obviously, you talk very openly about your therapy in the book. Did you get to a point where before your father passed, you were able to reconcile your relationship with him at all? Or
Never really.
Oh.
Never really. Even when he was dying, he said things like, because I had talked to him about it a lot, but we kind of grew very apart, and he got very drunk all the time. Now he became an alcoholic, and so, but he just said to me, I can't believe what you're telling me. I don't believe what you're telling me. How did I do anything? And it's so hard for him to understand what he had done that was wrong. He didn't get it. He didn't think there was anything wrong with putting his arms around and grabbing my breasts. He didn't see.
Getting into your bed with you and spooning with you.
His father had died when he was 7, and his mother raised 7 kids, and they had no background at all. She didn't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. She didn't know how to raise 7 kids. So they all were very sure that I talked to my cousin about it, my first cousin. And I said, it's the Bartletts. She said they were all of them had some kind of strange sexual things going on. And I said, it's true, because they had nobody to put limits on their behavior with each other.
And you say in the book that the healing for you came when you became a parent. You said your relationship with your sons taught you to forgive your father, or taught you to understand your father better.
Well, I think so because, he didn't like them, my kids. He and my mother referred to them as either the natural children of my brother or the unnatural children of Bonnie. Do you know? So, and my kids, they picked up on it. I mean, they adored Bill's parents, who had been terrible parents, but were wonderful grandparents. Wonderful grandparents. Did all the right stuff. They adored them. And my parents, as my son Robert said, well, Mom, he's just crazy.
Wow.
He's just crazy.
He just cuts right to
I was
it.
so afraid. Yeah, I was so afraid that he took him out to play golf, and I thought, oh God, what's he going to do? Because my father said terrible things. My father was a racist and what do you call it? He referred to his daughter-in-law.
Misogynist?
That, but even more than that.
Anti-Semitic or bigot?
Yeah, and he referred to his daughter-in-law with a nasty word in front of my son, and I said, Robert, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that Grandpa said that. He said, it's okay, Mom. He's just crazy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because you know
he
what?
He picked up on it right away. It didn't bother him at all.
For Rob, all that mattered was that you're okay.
Yes, I guess so.
It really only matters that your parents are okay. You can accept that their parents are crazy.
Yeah.
Just write it off real quickly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
You know, and your wonderfully talented husband, William Daniels, had his own issues with his parents.
Oh, yeah.
And that was that, you know, he was a child star, a dancer and a singer at a very young age. And he was in constant search of approval from his mother. And you said even as an adult, it was more important for him to please his mom in his performance than even the audience, which was fascinating.
Definitely. That's why turning down a Tony didn't mean a thing to him, but he could never turn down his mother. And you know what the last words she said to him? Mm-hmm. He said, Mom, he was on St. Elsewhere, and she was dying in the hospital. And he said, Mom, it's okay. I'm a big television star. And she said, big Broadway star.
Wow.
That's what it meant to her.
That's like a Carol Burnett sketch.
Yeah. Big
Those are her
Broadway
dying
star.
words.
Those were her dying words.
Wow.
Big
a hard
Broadway
thing
star.
to live up to for the rest of your adult life as well.
Yes.
But you were part of the Lee Strasberg world, which is just this sort of fascinating other world to people that study acting today. But you were in there, and you went to their home every Sunday, and you eventually became disillusioned. So talk about him and what you did get out of it and what you ultimately learned.
Well, Lee had an incredible ability to spot an actor's problems. If somebody did he knew how to get to the roots of what was holding them back and to try to help them. That was his big thing. He was not a good director, but he was an amazing teacher in that way, you know.
Let's tell people about. He was with the group and then
theater.
Actors Studio.
Yes,
which, and you hate the term the method, but it was this new form of acting. Just so people who
I think it was Brando. Yeah. Brando when he hit Broadway and Streetcar Named Desire, so everybody said, well, that's the method. Well, no, that was Brando's method. Mm-hmm. It wasn't from the studio. That was Brando. He was the genius.
Yeah. But you know what's
nobody
interesting?
taught him that.
But the method really was just sense memory.
It's sense
and
memory.
Going back to your own experiences to forward your emotions.
All through sense memory. Mm-hmm. And all those teachers, there were a lot of them, Bobby Lewis and Stella Adler, and the other great one over
Sandy Meisner.
And Stella, I saw just sat through some of her classes. She came from a different place. In other words, you're walking into a room and you're cold, and what do? Stella says, you put on a sweater. Lee Strasberg says, you go back, you feel the heat. You go to the fire to feel the heat. Totally different. You see, hers was a superficial reaction to the fire. He wants you to really feel the fire. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just a different approach. She believed in the text. She was wonderful on text, by the way. Wonderful on text. She thought that Zoo Story, was a very important. That my husband was.
Yeah, that was his breakout.
His breakout thing.
Edward Albee
and she
play.
thought that play was a milestone in the theater because it first dealt with the haves and the have-nots. And ever since then, we talk a lot about that.
What is the zoo story about? Tell us the plot.
That's a tough one.
Okay.
It's a brilliant short story, one-act play about a man who is a conventional businessman, typical New York businessman. He's the haves, and a guy who comes up to him in the park and says, "I've been to the zoo," and then they start talking. And it's a strange little love story because in the end, he gets the businessman to kill him.
Whoa.
Wow. And Bill did that play on Broadway, right? That was his breakout role.
Yeah, off-Broadway.
Right.
Off-Broadway, yeah. And everybody came to see that play. Everybody. It was, you're right. Laurence Olivier came to see it. Everybody, Kazan, all of them. Everybody in the theater world came to see that play because they were astounded by the play. And that was the beginning of his work.
Who were some of the people in your class
My class?
at Actors Studio?
Well, I wasn't in the actors studio.
Or the group?
Yeah, I was in the group. George Gaines and Alan and McCleary. They were a couple from New York and movies that were there. That wonderful actor who did a wonderful play off Broadway, but then he was a star for a long time. Law and Order.
Oh, Sam
Waterston?
Waterston.
No.
No.
We should know it. That's terrible.
Jerry Orbach.
Jerry Orbach.
Ah, yes.
Jerry Orbach was in my class.
Right
And
for the win.
he never did much. And then I saw him in an off-Broadway play where he sang. And it was a big play. And I thought, oh, my God, this guy is wonderful. And he had never done anything in class that, impressed me. I thought, oh, my God, this guy's wonderful. He sang wonderful. It was an off-Broadway play that ran for like 10 years. But he, of course, got out of it and went on to a big career, musicals, wonderful musicals.
Dirty
wonderful,
Dancing. Yeah.
Everything.
presence. Yeah.
And Marilyn Monroe was in class for a while. Jane was there very briefly, Jane Fonda. Susan, of course, Susan Strasberg. I did a lot of work with her.
Let me ask you a question about Susan Strasberg.
Yeah.
Because I've read a little bit about Marilyn Monroe. And there are people that think that was kind of an unholy alliance between the two of them. She would invite Susan to go with her on sets to movies. Susan was like her spirit guide, and she almost controlled her life and made her decisions for her because she was so insecure about herself. Is there any truth to that?
Well, they're both insecure.
Yeah.
Marilyn was amazingly
That's what
insecure.
yeah.
And Susan was because, and Lee was cruel to Susan. When we were working on a scene and she was upset and she went in to her father and she said, he was watching a ball game or something, and she said, "Dad, would you come and help me?" He said, "You take care of it. It's your problem." But it's your problem. She's crying. I'm waiting for her to rehearse, That's not necessary. You don't
He
have
was
to do
tough,
that.
right? He would denigrate you in front of other cast members.
If you did great work, it was his fault. If you did bad work, it was your fault.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He only took, in England, when they took a Chekhov play to England with all kinds of stars, and it bombed, and he directed it, and it bombed. He called the cast together and blamed them. Blamed them for it. It was their fault.
Failure is an orphan.
Huh?
Well, success has many parents. Failure is an orphan.
Yes. But he took, when I got pregnant, because they all knew about it, he told people that the only reason I got pregnant was because of my work with him.
Oh, Lord.
Can you believe that?
I guess I can.
Yeah, he told people that. I mean, where's his mind? Is that a crazy person or what? What do you call that person?
How did he? There were some people in there who, Elia Kazan and Brando and all these astonishing talents that sort of blossomed out of there. Where did he get his rep? How did he become this oracle of acting? What was his?
Because he did have this amazing way to help an actor be better. There's no question about it. Not a good director, because that's not what a director does. A director directs a play, but he's working individually. So you have Kim Stanley and people like that who he will let work on the stage rather than do the play. You know what I mean? They work, so that takes 30 minutes. So you have a Chekhov play that goes on and on and on. It isn't the play. That's not what you do as a director. Mm-hmm. So as I say, I don't think he was a good director at all.
Mm-hmm. And you took 2 classes with him. You took like 2 days a week. One was what you refer to as an exercise class.
Yes.
And the other was a scene class.
That's
Talk
right.
about the difference in what you did in each.
Well, in the exercise classes, you did all kinds of exercise for sense memory. And it's very hard, but you do it. The point is, too, as he says, it doesn't matter what you achieve, it's what you do. Maybe that's where they got the method word, because it's a way of doing it. He said, if you don't need it, great. If you are, he thought that ethnic people were much more in touch with their emotions and expressed more. He said, where I came from, the Middle West, you don't show anything. You just don't show anything. I said, oh, good. That gives me, that's swell. But he said, no, it's true. But, the ethnic people will express more. And it's wonderful. It's the Italian actors. And remember all those Italian movies? Wonderful.
Very expressive. But when you went to Northwestern, you had 2 schools of thought in the teaching of acting, that you would get on the wrong side of one or the other teacher by taking a class, and then you get to New York and it's the same thing. But ultimately you found out that each actor has to find their own way to their truth in their performance.
Of course. You have to. It's I don't know really what your question is.
Well, like everything that you learned along the way studying acting and these instructors being so partisan about their own way.
You have to find out. For instance, in Northwestern, when we were there, there was a very famous teacher, Alvina Krauss. Mm-hmm. Everybody, studied. If you talk to anybody from Pat Neal, all these people, she was their goddess, I didn't like her. I mean, I liked her, and she loved me as an actress, but she said, I don't know how you get there. I just don't know how you get anywhere. But you get it. How do you do it? Because she believed in a technique, bouncing the ball, and she had all these techniques. The kids loved them. They loved them. They thought they were wonderful. It didn't mean a thing to me. Because until I could really be on the stage and be me on the stage, not somebody else. I mean, I'm somebody else, but I'm me. Mm-hmm. That was my thing that I wanted to get from Lee, and I got it. I got it finally, but took a long time.
Right. And it also helped you work through some personal
Definitely.
issues.
Well, I was in therapy at the same time as my therapist loved it.
Yeah, but what I love about your book is the overlap of, you're just such a hard worker. You really want to dig in and get to truth.
I am. I'm a hard worker. I am a hard worker. Bill, it just comes.
Wow.
With Bill, it just comes.
But it was interesting.
He did his work as a kid.
Mm.
Yes, and he also wasn't buying the Lee Strasberg deal when he first went in there.
He and Lee had terrible fights.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I'd sit there and cry as they screamed at each other. And yet when we'd go to their home, Lee was very sweet, make you coffee or tea or whatever you wanted to do, and then he'd go in and listen to records, and Bill, of course, was the same kind of person. So Bill would go in, they'd sit to records, and Bill would say, hey, he turned that off. Don't turn that off. I want to hear that. Lee said, no, we've heard that. We'll go. And then it was a weird friendship. And Lee did finally come back. He came after Zoo's story. Bill came back. Lee came back and said to Bill, good work.
Oh.
But he was very good for Bill because he saw in Bill all of the phony things that you pick up when you're a kid.
Okay.
Most of them, most kids. And they, all of that stuff. He said, I don't know who you are. I don't know what to do with you. What do I do with you? How do I cast you? I don't know who you are.
It's like he's saying, how do I control you? How do I take credit for you?
Well, that wasn't obvious. No.
Yeah.
No, that's my... Lee never thought of he was doing anything bad. Never.
That was his instinct, is that these are my chess pieces and I'm going to get the credit for them.
Yeah, but I think you're putting it very strongly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think you're putting it very strongly.
Yeah.
No, I think it was all... he did see himself as a guru. Yes, he did. Definitely.
Yeah.
A god. But
not as malevolent as what I'm kind of making.
Yeah, not malevolent.
Right. So when you get to Hollywood, you're kind of surprised that, wow, you're booking stuff right and left.
Yeah, I took 10 years off to raise my boys.
Yeah.
Thank God. It was the best time of my life. I loved it. And in New York and the parks and all that stuff in the schools. But we came out here and it was in the middle of a difficult part of our marriage. And Bill, I didn't want to come to California. I didn't like the idea of California. I didn't want to. It was a bad time. And so he called his agent. He said, I want you to see my wife. She's very good, but she doesn't have any film. So I went and I sat with these guys, and they said, who do you know? I said, the only person I knew was Dan Petrie, because he had seen me work at Northwestern. He had seen me do Lady Macbeth. Mm-hmm. He had seen me do Barbara Allen. He was a big fan.
Yeah.
And so that was the only one. But I have no film. I have television, kinescopes.
Right. Of the soap.
of the soap.
Yeah.
And then theater, live television. I did a lot of little things on live. Philco, all those little shows. Yeah. I did stuff on that. But I said, no, I don't have any film. So they just sent me out. And it was like I was already 42 or something like that. And it was like I fit into everything. I could do the Waltons. I could do Gunsmoke. I did that 2 or 3 times. I could do other things where I'm supposed to be very good looking, and pretty and all that, dressed up. I did a Jewish mother. I did all kinds of parts. I could fit in. That's because that's me as an actress.
Yeah.
I'm a character.
And you were good.
Oh, yeah, I could do it well.
So
but I always knew that.
Oh, yeah. So on a set, it's like essential. That's like when you went and did Little House, there's a lot of different players and, they're managing a lot of children and there's a lot going on and they just plant you there and you've got it. So that was one less worry for the creators that
That's
you
right.
were so accomplished.
Michael loved me. And
so competent.
He even took some direction from me sometimes. Not a scene, and I'd say you set it up wrong. And he listened, and he did it. Because I could prove it to them that their way, they hadn't gone far enough. By the way, you mentioned something about I had a lot of help in the book when I started to work with my friend Lauren Lester. He's a good writer. He's a good actor. He's now on Broadway, and he's moved there. His lifelong dream was to go there. There he is. But he would always say, tell me how it feels. Go deeper. What was your reaction?
Good therapist.
Yeah. What was your reaction? I want to know more. I want to know more. And so he made me write and write and write, especially about my father.
It really is compelling and brave and awesome. Plus, I have to say, I listened to the book on tape. You have such a beautiful voice, which is stage trained. I mean, it was a pleasure to listen to you. Sometimes those are a slog. If you get somebody who's not particularly interesting and it's a monotone, you have...
it was like a performance for me.
Yes, it was.
And
I
I didn't know if I could do it.
You did a great job.
I didn't know if I could do it. And I went in and I had a wonderful man that helped, listened and did everything. And he said, just do it. And I said, okay, you tell me what to... Anyway, and I would do it for like 2 hours. And he'd say, okay, that's enough for today. Yeah. And I did it in about 4 sessions of 2 hours.
Wow.
And I loved it.
You know what?
I loved it.
I mean,
it was like a performance.
When you were doing somebody else's voice, you got into that character. It was really wonderful.
It was very me, very me.
Did you see the documentary about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward?
Yes.
I found similarities in you and your husband are 2 enormously talented people trying to have a relationship. And there's got to be professional jealousy and envy, and not all the time, but there's more to jockey when you're both going for the same goal when you're in a relationship, and I thought that was interesting.
Well, I think that's true. I don't think Paul and Joanne had a lot of problems about competition.
No, she mentioned
she was one. He was another. They worked differently. And then the relationship was the thing that they had to keep going. Mm-hmm. And with Bill and me, yeah, we're very different. We work differently, even though we've been trained a lot of the same way, but yet we work differently. I'm much more improvisational than he is. He doesn't want to go into that kind of thing. He could tell you some funny stories about improvisations. But anyway, and he really only wants to make you laugh. And that doesn't want to go into the personal things. I'm just the opposite. I want to communicate. I have a great desire.
Well, that's what resonates in your book, I think.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Right?
But I want to go back for a moment to Little House, because we have had some folks on the show that describe the tone of the set as being somewhat sexist, with a lot of that kind of raucous humor. But you, maybe because your dad had been so much more extreme, like tell us how
I think that's the truth.
Yeah, how you
I mean, I can have a drunken uncle that embarrasses me to death. I can do all of that, but I can also have a lot of fun with men. Mm-hmm. And if they are not trying to hurt me or do something or grab. So both Michael and Victor French teased me terribly because I was I was so new to film and I made such funny mistakes, and they loved that. They loved that. So yeah, they're teasing me, but not to make me feel bad.
With a lot of love.
With a lot of love and appreciation. Mm-hmm. Appreciation. They liked me.
Yeah, we've had a couple of actors from that show on, and it was very paternal. Michael was very paternal with particularly the younger members of the cast.
Sure. Melissa was wonderful. She was the most wonderful little girl that I ever knew.
Wow.
She was just, we would have these, she doesn't remember a lot of it. I see her occasionally, and she doesn't remember a lot of it, but I remember all of it. And I remember talking to her about very serious things like being adopted, because she was adopted.
Okay.
And my kids, and we talked about it, being adopted. And she said, what is he? I said, I am not the most patient person in the world, but Rob really needed me and needed me to be patient with him. She said, yes, he taught you to be patient.
Oh, really?
She said that to me. He taught you to be patient.
Oh,
She was a remarkable little girl.
Does she have children of her own now?
She does. She's had a terrible life, but now it's good. Now it's good.
Oh, good.
She's got a good husband. I think he's been wonderful. I think Melissa's good kid. She's a good lady now. She's a good lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about the pressure of being forced into that flirtation. Not really. The early romance on the show and how that was awkward for her and it made her completely uncomfortable. But anyway, she conquered it.
I'm sure.
So you and Bill have a great distinction of having played fictional husband and wife on 3 different shows. St. Elsewhere, and what were the other 2?
Well, I played his wife on Boy Meets World.
Boy Meets World, right?
Boy Meets World, and then we've played husband and wife on a lot of different things.
You can carpool. It's a package deal. I love that.
Well, how did your real life relationship with Bill inform your St. Elsewhere chemistry, in which you both won an Emmy the same year?
That's right.
It was just going in and you just did it. I mean, it was all there. You didn't have to work at all. You didn't have to find what to do, I mean, it was there. It was already, like I had an experience when I had to go to do an experimental film in San Diego, and I read the script, and I'm a dying woman, and so forth. And I go up there, and I walk into this room, and there's couple of young people there, and I know they're playing the young parts. And then there's a wonderful black actor. And I look at him and I say, are we playing man and wife? And he said, I think so. I said, we've got a lot of work to do. And so the two of us sat down before we shot and worked it all out. And by the time we shot, I had never kissed a black man. I had never stroked a black man. I had, that was, I'm 95. That's a long time ago. We grew up to think differently. And by the end of the hour, when we did the scene, first of all, I said, I'm dying. So you've got a great voice. You take a lot of the lines. So I gave him the lines. The director let me do it. And by the end of it, we were stroking each other. It was like, easy,
Wow.
easy. But that's kind of the work you have to do.
But you get to live other lifetimes.
Instead of just being sat there.
Yeah.
And then, you got to work. You've got to develop something.
But you get to have other people's lived experiences and have other lifetimes that you get to live, and it just broadens you.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. People, it's people. That's what I'm interested in. I've missed a lot of things in life because I've been so interested in people. And I've become aware of how much I don't see the flowers. I only see the people.
Right.
Do you like filming, or do you like performing in like off Broadway, a live audience?
It's hard. Broadway is hard. Theater is hard.
8 shows a week. Holy smokes.
8 shows a week, and theater, and you have to have such confidence. You have to really. I'm not nearly as happy on a stage as I am in front of a camera. I can do anything in front of a camera.
How about Bill? Does he like a live audience?
He loves it because he said it's power. He said, you go out on John Adams.
Oh.
He said, you go out, you come in front of the curtain and you say something like, I don't know the exact lines, but it's something like a lawyer and a law firm and a Congress, and by God, I hate this Congress. And he said, by the scent, you go out and you say that, and then opens up the curtain, sit down, John. And he said, but you're in control.
Yeah.
The whole audience is watching, and, he loves that.
Well, I was telling you ahead of time that one of my favorite musicals, and I watch it every 4th of July because they show it on Turner Classic Movies every year.
Yeah.
Is 1776. I thought it was more instructive about history than Hamilton even, because you could understand it lays the whole thing out. But John Adams was a short, blustering man that was not well liked. But your husband fills the room with his volume, and he just controlled stuff. And he was really wonderful.
He was, and he didn't have any amplifying material.
Wow.
None. He didn't. And I stood in the back with one of the women that takes you to your seat, the ushers, and she said, I can stand back here and I hear every word he says. And that's not true. It's because of his pronunciation and because of his, he knew how to project.
Diaphragmatic breathing.
And his immaculate speech.
Diction. Oh, yeah.
Maybe if you're
Amazing.
doing that since childhood, your whole diaphragm develops differently and it's stronger.
You're right. I think that is definitely.
But while we're talking about strength, you did become very strong because you came to know yourself, and then you came to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's exemplified in the story of what it took to get your picture on the opening credits of St. Elsewhere.
Well, I'm mixed about that because when you really attack somebody verbally, I'm not so sure that's a good thing to do. But I did, Bruce, and I loved Bruce. He was a wonderful producer, and I loved Blythe and all of them. But he had promised to do that, and he had promised to put. I would be the next person, because each month they add another person to the front till the studio didn't like it, I don't think, because the studio was crazy. It's too many people. And he promised that I would be the next one. And then a lovely actress came into the show. I'm sure he didn't expect it, but a lovely actress came into the show, and there was her picture, and I was not there, and I'd won an Emmy, and I called him a son of a bitch. I screamed at him. You would have thought it was my father talking. The language I used.
Wow.
because I said, "You son of a bitch, you know, Bonnie, like that." And then Mark Tinker called me. Mark Tinker was the producer and director. And Bonnie, what did you do? You can't talk to Bruce like that. I said, if Bill and he fight, and they fought all the time, drunk, at a party, they both drank, and then they fight and have these terrible fights, that's okay, right? But if a woman starts to scream, and I haven't had anything to drink, and I'm telling him what I think, that's bad, right? So I stood up to, I think Bruce was a little bit off of me, definitely. I saw him just before he died. Oh. He happened to go to the same doctor I went to, and he came out and he said, "Bruce, how are you?" He said, I'm fine. And he said, "I'm taking Gwyneth to Europe. We're going to Europe." I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful." I went in, I talked to my doctor. "How's he doing?" He said, "He's not going to live. He's not going to make it." Oh. He's had it. And sure enough, he died in Europe. Oh. Taking Gwyneth to Europe, and he died there. So I guess I saw him just before that. Yeah. But he was a difficult man, but boy, and Gwyneth is like him. Not like Blythe at all. Blythe was this perfectly marvelous person and a great actress and all that, and she's
It's funny that Gwyneth just completely gave up her acting career, and she was at the peak of her game.
Boring, not enough power, boring. I'm sure she was bored. I think a lot of people are bored with acting, and because they're not really doing it. They're playing them. They're just stars. Yeah. I guess it's boring to be a star, unless you're maybe Taylor Swift, and she has to sing and dance and stuff.
She's very, very busy.
She's very busy.
You have some interesting one-offs. You won an Emmy for an after-school special called "She Drinks a Little." And I want to talk about that a little bit. And then I want to talk about the impact of Barbara Thorndyke. I find this mesmerizing.
Yes, it is.
So let's start with Barbara Thorndyke. Who is she, and why is she indelible?
Well, I was called to do, I was called the week before, and they said, "Would you be available?" It's to play, and they said the script was I was to play a lesbian, and I said, "Oh yes, that'd be fun. I'd love to do that." And then they used another actress who was wonderful, and then the next week they said, "Would you come in and do this?" So I read the script. I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Sure, I'll do it. I want to be on the Golden Girls.
We're talking about the Golden Girls.
Yeah, we're talking about the Golden Girls. I want to be on there, and so it was right after St. Elsewhere. So went in to do the show, and B. Arthur was a friend of mine from New York, and we were buddies. And the real B. Arthur and I she has a wonderful way of seeming. She's a sweet potato. She's a sweet potato, mm-hmm. But she has this great thing that she developed. So it was nice, and I knew Rue from New York, and she'd worked with Bill, and I hadn't known Betty White, and the older lady was just wanted to be my best friend. She was just a sweetheart. So I was very comfortable. The director was easy with me, and I'm not that easy with that kind of comedy. Well, you got to get a laugh every 2 minutes. I kind of don't work that way, so I was nervous. So, but I was also at ease, and it was a very nice week. And it was interesting because toward the end, I played my mother, is what I did. Wow. It was my mother. Okay. And sweet, but behind it, So 3 older gentlemen quit on the day we were shooting, 3 of them. And I thought, why are these men quitting? Because of the anti-Semitism. I didn't realize it was there that strong. Because I was, it was my mother, I didn't think anything of it. And then when I came out, and they introduced me as Ellen from St. Elsewhere, and everybody smiled and laughed and so forth. And then when I came out after the show, they booed.
Wait, because there was anti-Semitism in the script?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I don't let them come to. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You can't come." You know, I don't say you're Jewish. I just say, oh, I'm so sorry. You're not welcome, or something like that, you know. And I was mean to the other ladies. I said, you're so dumb. You know, you're all so dumb. And I was just very honest about saying things openly, negative things about people.
Bigotry with a smile.
Bigotry with a smile. And I preached a sermon at 18 in my local church called, You're a Christian, so what? I was 18, and I saw all this stuff, you know, and I belted them with it, and they loved it.
Yeah, all this hypocrisy.
Yeah, hypocrisy.
Was there any repercussions to the episode, or?
It's the most watched of all the Golden Girls episodes.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, about 10 years ago, they started, people, Barbara Thorndyke, you're Barbara Thorndyke. And she had her own little place on the television thing and everything.
Because she's like Archie Bunker.
She's big.
You have to understand, like, the guys who quit, I'm very sorry, but, like, the bigger picture was you were shining a spotlight on how certain people behave, and it's not okay.
It's not okay. And so it is huge. It is huge. I have my granddaughter made a T-shirt that says, go to hell, because that's what Barbara B. Arthur said to me, go to hell. At the end, she threw me out. Okay. I go out smiling. Okay.
All right, let's talk about she drinks a little, because there again, I think you had a chance to play someone.
That was very important to me.
Yeah.
I knew how to play that lady. Oh, did I? I was raised with drunks. And mostly the men, but the women too. And I knew what it was. It was awful. And I thought it would be helpful because it was an afternoon special for the Al-Anon.
Right, Alateen.
And I thought, oh, this will be good for them to see.
Oh, yeah.
How this nice lady becomes, lovely lady, becomes awful and embarrasses the shit out of her kid. Mm-hmm. Just embarrasses.
Yeah. And I think those after-school specials really, really helped. This is a time when there's 3 channels and there's no internet. There's nowhere to know whether or not what's going on in your household has a name, or, that you're alone or not alone. And
I'm very proud of that episode. Yeah. I'm very proud of doing that. Yeah, it's no longer here, but it was wonderful.
I watched the whole thing on YouTube.
Did you?
So whether it's pirated or not, I watched it, and you're extraordinary.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it. Thank you for watching that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so what should we talk about before we close? Fritz, was there anything else that you wanted to get to?
No, I'm I'm astonished at your energy, and you're 95 years old, and you're just you act like a woman of third your age. Grow up. No, it's amazing. What a treat. I think your book is very instructive.
I do too. I think
particular
it's a good book
to women, for the the pre-Me Too stuff, what women had to put up with, and how you've dealt with your own issues head on through therapy and your own self-investigation is quite admirable.
That's the way I feel. It's like when I lost the baby, and of course I went through a lot. Okay, what's the next step? You adopt. And so you can't do it right now. You do it. You find a way to solve your problem, mm-hmm. your desire. And there are always ways.
Yeah, and you always
except I'm not sure about right now.
Right now, I think
we're all crazy now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a scary time, but
it is scary.
We all need to do. I think we all need to become activists. I don't think it's enough to vote. Of course, I know everyone.
No, you have to do everything else.
Everyone who's listening is going to vote, but you have to do more than vote. You have to.
I write the cards.
There you go.
We do the cards.
Good for you.
The last time I sent a lot to Pennsylvania.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit.
You can have parties and write cards.
Well, she's done it. She's done. Adam Schiff and all these people.
I love him.
She has sponsorships at her home. I mean, she really does a lot more than most people. Yeah.
Bravo.
We do fundraisers. My sister-in-law has a whole card writing campaign that she does, and I think it's effective because I think we get too many texts, we get too many emails. But when you receive a postcard, And it's colorful, and it just says, remember, this is election day, and here's your polling place. You put the card down at the front hall, and then it reminds you, like, because most people are busy. They might not remember it's election day or that to fill out their ballot or whatever. And here's what Fritz and I have been doing, and I'll tell you about it real quick. Fritz and I have created a web hub to help you shop for gifts and save democracy in one fun stop. Giftofdemocracy.com is a directory pointing you towards candidates and causes committed to protecting and defending our democracy. You can simply donate or browse for fun, swaggy merch for the loved one on your shopping list. Fritz and I make no money here. We don't need it. We are not running for office. Our site is like a mall directory sign that points you towards the merchandise and donate pages of worthy candidates and causes. It's the donation that counts. Democracy makes a great gift. And we have a link in our show notes. So if you have to get someone a gift, go to giftofdemocracy.com, and you can click onto the merchandise page of Colin Allred or the candidate of your choosing and buy someone a hat or a mug or some fun swag, and it will donate to the candidate. Because we all have to do a little bit more this time.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that I can do or that I can get Bill to do, because he has an enormous fan base.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We'll get him to do something.
And I'm sending you home with some Gift of Democracy swag.
Okay.
For you and for Bill.
Thank you.
All right, so here come our closing credits. Thanks for coming along down the Media Path. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram and Twitter, where we are at Media Path Pod, and on Facebook, where our show page is Media Path Podcast, and our Facebook group is Media Path with Fritz and Weezy Podcast Community. We are also a video podcast on YouTube with so much additional content. Watch us and subscribe at Media Path Podcast. Write to us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com, and kindly give us a nice rating wherever you get your podcasts. And our website is mediapathpodcast.com. Head over there to catch up on episodes and get our spicy newsletter. It's loaded with photos, quizzes, and backstage gossip. We want to thank our wonderful guest, Bonnie Bartlett. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Mason Brown, Garrett Arch, Raf Rusak, Jordan Reyes, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Planker, here with Fritz Coleman and Bonnie Bartlett. Be well and wise, and we will see you along the Media Path. Thank you. Wow, thank you very much.
I only
What?
connect myself to good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just on my coattails, you know.
That was awesome, Bonnie.